They didn't want my money. They didn't want to fight. They wanted me, and they had been planning it for weeks. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now. Have you ever felt like you were being watched and been right? Let me see it. I need you to understand something about me before I tell you this story. I am not naive. I am not the kind of person who misreads situations or jumps to conclusions or lets fear talk her into seeing things that aren't there. I've worked bars since I was 22. I've handled drunk men twice my size. I've diffused fights before the first punch landed. I've learned to read a room full of strangers the way other people read a book, fast, accurately, and without missing the important parts. That's what makes what happened to Meso difficult to explain, because they were good. They were very, very good. And by the time I understood what was happening, I was almost already gone. My name is Cadence. I work the closing shift at a small dive bar in the quieter part of my town, right off the highway, parking lot with a back entrance that opens to the street, accessible to anyone who wants to come in from either direction. It's nothing fancy, dimly lit. Regulars who know each other by name. Jukebox that's been playing the same classic rock rotation for longer than I've worked there. I like it. The routine is predictable, the tips are decent, and I know how to handle every type of person who walks through that door. The talkers, the flirters, the quiet drinkers, the ones who just want to be left alone. Weekends are hectic, but weeknights I work alone. No bar back, no second staff member, just me, the jukebox, and whoever decides to walk in off the highway. I tell you this because it matters. They knew I worked alone, and they had figured that out before the first time he ever walked through the door. It was a Tuesday, just after 1 a.m. The bar had thinned out, a couple of regulars at the far end, the kind of quiet that meant the night was almost over. And then the door opened. I clocked him immediately. That's not something I do with every customer, but something about him demanded attention the second he entered. Late 40s, extremely clean cut, well-groomed, black turtleneck under a black trench coat, the kind of look that costs money, real money, the quiet kind that doesn't need to announce itself. He glanced around the bar slowly, not the casual scan of someone deciding where to sit. A deliberate survey, taking in the layout, the exits, the sight lines, the other customers. Then he walked directly to the bar and sat down, oddly good posture, the kind of posture you don't develop by accident. Oh no. I walked over. He glanced at the bottles behind me and ordered top shelf without hesitation. Then he smiled and asked if I liked working here. Normal question, easy smile, genuinely warm energy. I told him, yeah, made a small joke about bartending. He laughed. And here is the part that disturbs me most when I look back on it. I liked him. Immediately. Naturally. Without any effort on his part. He had the energy of someone you've met before but can't quite place. Familiar without being forward. Warm without being intrusive. The kind of person your guard just lowers around. And I know now that was entirely by design. We talked for a while. He was interesting. Easy to talk to, asked good questions, and actually listened to the answers. Then he asked me if I ever thought about doing something bigger. Unusual question. I gave him my standard smile, told him I was happy for now. He nodded, sipped his drink, looked almost disappointed, like he'd asked something important and gotten the wrong answer. I filed that away without fully understanding why. Then after a pause he asked what time I got off. I assumed it was a flirt, the standard attempt dressed up in better clothes. I gave him a vague answer. Smiled. Busied myself, wiping down the counter to signal I was done. He didn't press, he just smiled, like he already knew the answer. Like the question hadn't really been about getting my number at all. He laid a crisp $100 bill on the bar. Gently, without flourish. The way someone sets down something they have plenty more of. And then he walked out into the night without another word. I stood there for a moment after he left, trying to identify what was bothering me. I couldn't. He hadn't done anything wrong. He hadn't said anything threatening. He'd been perfectly pleasant. And yet something in the back of my mind was running quietly, the way a smoke alarm runs in low battery, a sound so faint you almost convince yourself you're imagining it. I told myself I'd never see him again. I was wrong. About a week later, the door opened and he walked back in, but this time, he wasn't alone. The woman beside him drew my attention immediately. Mid-30s, dressed in a way that didn't quite fit, trendy but calculated, like someone who had studied how to appear casual without being it. Everything about her was performed. I understood that the moment she walked in. I just didn't understand what the performance was for yet. They approached the bar together. I set down napkins, and before I could speak, before she ordered, before she introduced herself, the very first thing she said to me was, "You're so pretty." Her fingers touched my arm as she said it, lingering just slightly longer than contact between strangers should linger. Aditay. I laughed, thanked her, but something in me went very still, the kind of still that happens before you know what you're reacting to. The man said nothing, which itself was strange, and he had been so talkative before. Now he sat beside her without a word, watching. She ordered drinks. Then the questions started. How long had I worked here? How old was I? Did I live nearby? Did I work alone most nights? She framed everything as small talk. But small talk doesn't have a direction. This did. She was building something, assembling information. Each question a small piece of something larger I couldn't quite see yet. Then she looked at the man, just for a moment, and something passed between them without a single word. She looked back at me, leaned in slightly, lowered her voice. She told me she ran an exclusive event club, private parties, high-end clients. She was always looking for young, fun people. Then she said the number, $10,000 for a weekend. I forced a small laugh, told her it sounded too good to be true. She insisted it was real. Told me other girls just like me worked for them. Her smile never once moved. Not a flicker, not a natural shift, just fixed. Patient, like she had said these exact words many times before and knew exactly how long it took for them to work. And then, she said, "You should step outside for a second. There's someone who can explain it better." My pulse didn't just quicken. It stopped for one full beat and then hammered back. Because, in that moment, every piece I had been collecting without realizing it, the way he surveyed the bar when he first walked in, the question about what time I got off, the disappointment when I said I was happy here, the return visit with a woman, the touching, the questions about my schedule, the fixed smile, the silent communication, all of it assembled itself into one clear picture in less than a second. "I'm good," I said. No smile, no apology, no softening, just those two words in a voice I didn't know I had, flat, certain, and final. Oi tu. The door opened. A group of customers walked in laughing, and I watched, in real time, the woman's expression change, just for a fraction of a second. The friendliness didn't fade, it dropped, like a mask that had been held up too long by tired hands. She turned to the man, and without another word, they left. I stood behind that bar for a long moment after they walked out. My hands were completely steady. I remember noticing that and thinking, it was strange, because everything else inside me was not. I told my boss and my coworkers everything. We agreed to watch for them. My boss reminded me the security cameras were running and that he was 15 minutes away. I told myself that was enough. I was wrong about that too. A few nights later, after closing, I walked out of the parking lot and I saw the car parked across the street, engine off, lights off, just sitting there. I want to tell you I immediately knew, but the truth is, for about 30 seconds, I convinced myself it was nothing. A car parked on a street, normal, explainable. Kept my head down, keys in my hand. Walked to my Carrot, pace that I was trying to keep normal. I pulled out of the lot, checked my mirrors. The car's headlights came on. Turned right. It turned right, I turned left. It turned left, not close, just close enough. Specific distance of something that doesn't want to be caught, malign, but wants you to know it's there. I took a random turn onto a side street I had no reason to be on. The headlights followed, I took another, still there. I want you to sit with that feeling for a moment. It's late at night. You are alone in your car. You have taken two completely random turns that nobody following you normally would have any reason to take, and the headlights are still in your mirror. I didn't go home. I did not lead them to my address. I drove directly to the nearest police station and pulled into the lit parking lot at full speed. The car behind me accelerated and was gone. Sat in that parking lot for a long time, engine running, hands on the wheel, telling myself it was over, telling myself I was safe, telling myself they wouldn't come back. They came back. Slow weeknight, barely anyone in, by midnight, was wiping down the counter, half thinking about closing early. The door creaked open. It was her, alone this time, no man beside her. Just her walking slowly to the bar, sitting down, folding her hands neatly on the counter and looking at me with that same fixed smile, like she had simply picked up where she left off, like nothing in between had happened. Like the car following me home had been a perfectly normal thing to do. I texted my boss under the counter. My hands were not steady this time. She watched me set my phone down. Thought I'd come check on you, she said. I told her we were closing, that she had to leave. She made a small, pouty expression and asked for just one old-fashioned. Oh, I made a calculation in real time. If I refused, she might escalate. If I made the drink, my boss had more time to arrive. I turned around and started making it, keeping my breathing even, keeping my hands moving, keeping my eyes on the bottles in front of me. When I heard it, I turned around. The bar was empty. She was gone. The door was closed. And through the glass, idling in the parking lot, a black van. Then the back door, metal rattling. Someone trying the handle from the outside once, twice, 3 times. Want you to understand what the next 30 seconds felt like. I was alone. The front had a van. The back had someone trying to get in. My boss was 15 minutes away. The police were further. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could reach in a metal shaker, and I dialed 911 with my other hand. I stood in the middle of that bar and I made myself think. Front door, fun. Back door, someone trying to enter. Running out the front meant running toward the van. Running out the back meant running toward whoever was on the other side of that door. There was no good option, only the one that bought me the most time. Headlights flooded through the front window. My boss pulling into the lot. Sir. The rattling at the back stopped instantly, like someone had flipped a switch. And the van peeled out of the lot with a sound that I still hear sometimes when it's quiet. Here's the part that I think about every single night. On the security footage, just before the woman left, the cameras had captured 2 masked figures crouched near the front door, waiting, hidden from the street. Hidden from me. There was a third figure at the back, banging on the door with his fist, trying to drive me toward the front. Where the 2 masked figures were waiting, I don't know where they are now. I don't know whose bar they walked into after mine. I don't know whose closing shift they're currently studying. But I know this, they're still out there. They're still watching. And somewhere tonight, there is a woman wiping down a bar counter at 1 a.m. who just served drinks to a very well-dressed man with very good posture, who asked her what time she gets off, and smiled like he already knew.